Playoffs are upon us. Super wild card weekend not far away. And the best part is that we get to enjoy the 49ers playing in the opening game of the weekend. We get through the Seahawks game, and then we can either wallow for the rest of the weekend or enjoy the rest of the football. We very much hope it's the latter. And I believe it's the latter as well. Will Gavin alongside me, Nicholas McGee, brilliant writer and 49ers fan here in the UK. Nicholas, how are we feeling ahead of the weekend?
Yeah, I'm pretty amped up for getting there. The thing with the playoffs is you kind of go over the matchup in your head 17 times and find reasons to be fearful and reasons to be excited. And the more I think about it, the more I find reason to be excited, even though there's the looming spectre of some bad weather potentially equalising things. But I think we're ready to go, and I'm sure the Niners will be as well.
I know bad weather, you talk about that equalising things, and obviously the horror of the early season defeat to the Bears immediately springs to mind. Poor Trey Lance in that tough as anything conditions. But I feel like between the addition of McCaffrey, having a fully healthy Elijah Mitchell back, Aaron Banks, who I know is still questionable on the reports, but told me and us yesterday that he expects to play on that knee, as does Javon Kinlaw this weekend. He told us the same. Like, I just feel like they are so well set up to play in that weather. And I know that's technically, that is Seahawks weather, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that they'll run the ball like 25, 30 plus times. I'm sure that we'll see plenty of their brilliant young rookie Walker. All of that exists. All of that is fine. But with Jordan Brooks out for the Seahawks and with the run game as good as it is for San Francisco, I'm feeling weirdly positive about this weekend, which, maybe that's what 10 wins in a row does to a human being. And maybe, it's the highs before the fall. But I don't know. I just don't see it this weekend, Nicholas. I just see it being not routine, but a good Niners win.
I've been very reassured by, and it's weird you can never read too much into press conferences or media sessions or whatever, but I think Shanahan coming out Tuesday, Wednesday and just saying we're ready to go. And then the tone that the players have struck whenever I've watched some of the media responsibilities this week, it's kind of striking the right tone between we respect these guys, but we are ultra prepared and we know what we need to do. And that's kind of the tone that reassures you that there's probably not going to be that kind of lull that you might worry about, and that they are going to be ready to go. And regardless of the weather or anything else, they're going to find a way to get this done.
For me as well, like, again, going back to the interviews as done this week, it was interesting. Aaron Banks talked about, the classic player stuff of, 1 week at a time. We're just preparing for this week. That's what we've done every week. But there's part of knowing they've won the West since they faced the Seahawks on that Thursday night game, knowing that it was just about seeding and that their playoff hopes were, not on the line. You compare that with that big emotional win against the Rams last year, and then you go into the next week and you're feeling very wobbly on the whole thing. I feel like the way that this locker room is set up, the way that there are very high character guys throughout, everyone that we speak to is very level headed. It might be kind of boring that there's not those big, massive characters. And the characters, we got fun guys. We've got guys like George Kittle who's fun. That you might not have those big explosives, like, wow, in your face characters. But it feels like that kind of almost Belichick style locker room where it's very business. Everyone knows their job. Everyone knows what they need to do. And everyone is just prepared and ready. And yeah, it's that unnervingly positive feeling I feel right now.
Yeah, you're right. The classic line that Shanahan spouts weekly: you never get too high, you never get too low, win or lose. And you say a game at a time. I mean, it's a cliche. A lot of players believe that and do actually live their lives that way. They say it as cliches, but they really espouse it because a lot of them just do deal with it that way. They're very good at compartmentalizing things and just not focusing on anything but a given week. It's a cliche, but a lot of time cliches are cliches because they're true. And I think the Niners are a team that embody that.
We haven't talked about the brilliant stuff we've got coming up this week. So keep an eye out over both the Gridiron Twitter channel, Instagram as well, at UK Gridiron. A lot of our content will be going out around the game on TalkSport 2 this weekend as well. We are going to be speaking to Greg Papa, the brilliant commentator for 49ers Radio, previewing the game this weekend. And we're going to be speaking to a former 49ers head coach in the former Steve Mariucci. So, as much fun as me and Nicholas have sitting here and shooting the about the 49ers, like, there are going to be some pretty significant names coming on the show over the coming days. So it's an exciting time to be alive, Nick.
You make me think of the I don't know if you've seen the Simpsons episode where the man puts himself in the freezer in the Quickie Mart and then comes out and thinks he's come out 100 years later and grabs something called moon pie and says, "What a time to be alive!" It makes you remind me of that. That's one of my favorite Simpsons bits ever. But yeah, it's a wonder. It is a wonderful time to be alive. There's been 10 wins in a row, and that leads itself to getting big name guests and getting even bigger stars than ourselves on the podcast.
Well, look, let's turn our attention to some of those guests then. There's plenty of locker room chat coming up on the way. But first of all, let's hear from the voice of the 49ers. If you've not heard this guy on the radio, you'll have heard him on maybe the Around the NFL podcast over the last 10 weeks as we keep winning games. You'll have heard him on TalkSport 2 as we've brought you commentary there throughout. The man of the Bay, former Raiders play-by-play man. But trust me, he is all in on the 49ers. Greg Papa chatting to us on Tales from the Bay. Well, delighted to say that joining the show now ahead of Super Wildcard Weekend, not just Wildcard Weekend, Super Wildcard Weekend, the 49ers opening the weekend at home to their Seattle Seahawks, well-known foe, and I'm delighted to say that Greg Papa is with us. Papa, I mean, since you took over as voice of the 49ers, they can't stop going to the playoffs, so you're used to a bit of January football in San Francisco.
3 out of 4 years. The 1 year was the pandemic year, so we're on a roll. And I think more than me, I think that drafting of Nick Bosa with the second overall pick in 2019 may have changed the fortunes of the franchise. But that year, Nick's rookie year, started off 8-0, 13-3, hosted 2 playoff games, and got within 7 minutes and 13 seconds of winning the Super Bowl. And then the Chiefs run that 2-3 chip jet wasp play on 3rd and 15. And the pandemic year was weird, obviously, and Nick got hurt. Jimmy got hurt, Raheem Mostert got hurt, everybody got hurt. And then that was just a, throw it out year. And then last year, starting 3-5, getting hot, winning in Dallas, winning in Green Bay, having the Rams down by 10, going to the fourth quarter of the title game, and damn. And then, but this year, I don't know, Fred Warner was saying this, Will, and you've been covering this team a long time and watching. He thinks this is the best chance they have to win the Super Bowl. And you're like, well, 2019, Fred, you were 1 third down stop away from winning it. But I think if you played this year's team with the 2019 team or last year's team, this team is better. And the major reason, a lot of reasons, Nick's better, but Christian McCaffrey, what he's doing since he's been a full-time starter, as you know, they've not lost. They're 10-0. And then Brock Purdy, and Jimmy was good. Jimmy was really good. But I think the 49ers may have found the best quarterback they've had with Kyle, with this guy as the last pick of the draft. What a story. Just amazing.
Astonishing. I before the 2020, so 2 years ago, before the season, DeForest Buckner joined us from the Colts, as he is now. And he told us he has on his wall the picture of him coming within 6 inches of Patrick Mahomes on that play. He's like, that is my motivation, is having that on my wall, knowing that I would have a ring right now if I just had another half a second. Like, that would have been the difference. And it is, he focused so much on that play about how deep the drop was, about the coverage, about everything else. I'd never realized how close Buckner came to him. And it is, I don't know where your position was in the stadium, but we were in the end zone directly above that. And so, just astonishing. Just
also on that play, watch Nick Bosa get held. That was actually.
I mean, that's every play. That's every play for the last 4 years.
Eric Fisher, the Chiefs' left tackle, who was the number 1 pick in his draft years before. Will, go back and watch that play. He's clearly grabbing Nick. He does get held every play, but that play, it was so blatant. And the way, remember when Mahomes backpedaled? So when I first saw that play, I thought Mahomes underthrew Tyreek. But when you look at it, he backpedaled like 17 yards. The ball was in the air like 60 yards, and he was backpedaling because Bosa was all over him. And if you go back and watch it, really, Nick was held. But you know what? That was Super Bowl 54. We're moving on with designs on getting Super Bowl 57.
I think our commentator said something like, I swear that was a 15-step drop. What on earth? Like, it is astonishing. Magical stuff. Look, I'm going to flip this a little bit because we've done a lot of analysis. We've talked a lot about the Niners already this year, and we've chatted to a couple of guys in the locker room, etc. So, I know that you study both teams. I know you've seen the Seahawks a couple of times this year as well. What should the 49ers be ready for this weekend with Seattle, and where can they potentially cause an upset on the field?
Well, I think the one thing, and we saw this team, a month ago, December the 15th in Seattle on that Thursday night. And the one thing the 49ers did in that game was they moved their best corner and tallest corner, Charvarius Ward. We call him Mooney Man here, number 7. And he followed DK Metcalf around almost the entire game. And it was a street fight. That was one of my most fun encounters, doing football all these years, was our Charvarius, just because DK Metcalf is big and strong. He's the bully. He bullies everybody. That night, Charvarius Ward bullied the bully, and it was a brawl. He got a personal foul on him, and it was so much fun. There was an offensive pass interference on DK, and he was losing his mind. So the 49ers have shown that they will have Charvarius Ward follow DK Metcalf around, Will, with the exception of when DK Metcalf goes in the slot. They have not asked Charvarius Ward to go inside with him. Now, the 49ers in this playoff game could do that. They could say, even if he goes in the slot, he's going in there. But they have not shown that. So on my radio show in San Francisco today, we had Sanjay Lal, who's a friend of mine going back to the Raiders days. He is Seattle's wide receiver coach and passing game coordinator. And I asked him, what I'm laying out to you was, Ward's going to follow DK around with the exception of when he goes in the slot. Will you put him, formationally, how much do you put him in the slot? And he said, we're not going to give you the game plan, but you're exactly right. If we put DK in the slot, then he won't go in there. So that'll be the other Ward. Jimmy Ward will have to match up with him. Or they could try to create a situation where Diamador Lenore would have to face DK Metcalf. And teams have been attacking Diamador Lenore, Will, just because he's smaller. Like the AJ Green, the second play of the game against Arizona. They created that jump ball, and AJ Green at 6'4" just went up and took it away. Demo's under 6 feet. So look for him to do some of that, I think, in the game. And DK does not go in the slot a lot. 17% of all snaps this year, he's gone in the slot. So they may not do it all the time, but a big third down situation where they want him to use his size, just go up and bully, whether it's Jimmy Ward or Demo Lenore. I think that's the one wrinkle we'll see for them offensively. And then defensively, conversely, their best corner is Tariq Woolen, the rookie. He's 6'4". He's fast as hell. He ran a 4.26 40. The 49ers will challenge him, but he's the kind of guy you want to stay away from, and you want to attack their other guys, Michael Jackson, and their slot corner is Kobe Bryant. So will they conversely ask Tariq Woolen to follow maybe George Kittle around? What if they did that? What if they had him go at Kittle? Not Brandon Ayuk. Debo's tough to follow because he lines up, he moves. He's what they call the Z receiver, which is the flanker. He moves a lot in motion. You can hide him. You can motion him in the offensive backfield and give him the ball like a running back. So Debo's a hard guy to follow. Ayuk you could follow. But what if they put him on George Kittle? Something they haven't shown ever. But I've seen teams, Jalen Ramsey follows Travis Kelce around sometimes, elite tight ends. And George has scored 7 touchdowns the last 4 games. And when we saw this team a month ago in Seattle on that Thursday night, he had 2 touchdowns. And they didn't have anybody that could cover him from the linebacker level or the safety level. So they play mostly zone. So they probably won't do that. But let's just see if they do. So I think it's, will Seattle move DK Metcalf in the slot to get Charvarius Ward off of him? And will they assign Tariq Woolen, the guy to follow around? Because he's clearly the best cover guy.
I think, when we look at the first half of the season, when they went 6-2, and Geno Smith in particular surprised everyone, there were so many explosive plays in that offense. And in the second half of the year, it just feels like that's disappeared. I think we saw a few against the Jets, and that really made the difference in that game. But that's when you talk about the idea of targeting Demo, of maybe trying to find a way. Like, we know Marquise Goodwin very well from his time in San Francisco. If they try and use those third guys to maybe try and pick on what they might see as the weaknesses, or try and force
Yeah.
safeties to cover, I feel like without at least 3-4 of those explosives, as you love to call them on the radio, and we love hearing them called, then I think without those, I think the Seahawks will really struggle to move the ball, honestly.
Yeah. So just to differentiate, and it's the coaching staff calls them that. So any pass play 20 or more yards is an explosive. Any run play 10 or more yards is an explosive. And the 49ers said, I think it's 184, somewhere in there, explosives offensively. So that's one of the most, we're talking, 17 games, you're talking 10, and maybe it's less, maybe it's 140, but I think they had the third most in football, Will, and one of the most, in the history of the franchise. So that's where, that's how you make big plays. Christian McCaffrey is a walking explosive. That guy, we call Juwan Jennings third and Juwan. The coaches call Juwan Chains for moving the chains, but I call McCaffrey Chains. McCaffrey, every time he touches the ball, it's either a first down or a touchdown. He picks up 9 or 10 yards every play. So when he does it as a runner, that's an explosive. So these are it's like the home run in baseball. Whoever hits the most home runs typically wins a baseball game. Whoever has the most explosives in a football game typically wins. So the 49ers are good generating explosives offensively, and then they don't give them up defensively, with the exception of the Kansas City game. They detonated the whole game. Like every play was an explosive. So after that, though, they don't allow them. So these are the special athletes that can explode on you. Tyler Lockett, we haven't talked about him. That guy's a hard guy to match up with. And he's playing with a broken left hand. He's got 6 screws in that hand, but that little sucker missed 1 game. He is tough. DK Metcalf is overtly, huge tough. 6'4", 2.25 tough. Tyler Lockett's tough in a whole different way. So we're getting into all these exotics with these great players in space. But you know what it's going to come down to? We're going to have a lot of rain for this game when it kicks off. Well, it's going to rain hard. I think the whole game. Who can run the ball? You're talking Kyle Shanahan and you're talking Pete Carroll. What are they based on? Running the football. So can Seattle's iffy, and I'm being kind, run defense stop Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, when they motion Deebo Samuel in the backfield and give him the ball like a running back, when they bring in the closer, the finisher, J.P. Mason, can they stop the 49ers from running the ball? And conversely, late in the year, they call him K9 up in Seattle. He wears number 9, Kenneth Walker III, the rookie, explosive running back, a great speed to get to the edge. They're having him run downhill more. So we could, trick it up. We're going to follow that guy around. We're going to follow that guy around. But really, it's blocking, it's tackling, getting off blocks, and the running game. Whichever team dominates the other in the run game is going to have Seattle's got to run the ball. There's no way Geno could drop back and throw it, with Nick Bosa in that front coming after them. So, and then, the 49ers are going to try to run the ball. So in the simplest form, which team can run the ball the best through this rainstorm on Saturday?
I think the one thing about the running of the ball that intrigues me, and I thought it was fascinating to see the number of screen setups we maybe saw this past week, is Jordan Brooks missing for the Seahawks. Feels like, every city has their linebacker, as I heard someone say this week when talking about the Hall of Fame class. He's theirs right now, and without him in there, I fear for them when it comes to just how many different looks that offense can give you in the run game.
Absolutely. He's their leading tackler, second leading tackler in the NFL, and he tore his ACL. So going back in time, when they had the Legion of Boom and that great defense, it was a cover 3 defense. So they played 3 deep, with Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor. But it was the buzz of the linebackers underneath that made that defense so great. It was Bobby Wagner, and it was the very underrated KJ Wright. So KJ's been gone for a couple of years. Bobby, in fact, it was March the 8th, the day that they traded Russell to Denver. They also released Bobby Wagner. So they gave this defense over to Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton. because they're playing a 3-4, so they have two stacked linebackers, not one middle linebacker. So both those guys, Cody Barton's a special teams guy, but they're asking to play a lot, as a starting linebacker. And Jordan Brooks, great tackler, but the 49ers attacked him as a coverage guy in space. He's not good, but now he's gone. So that area now, they got a couple of guys they're using. Tanner Muse, number 58, who's in on the base downs. So if you want to play with Juszczyk on the field, they're going to match up with their base linebacker, so he'll be on the field. So if you want to, run out of what the 49ers call 21 personnel, two running backs, say McCaffrey and Juszczyk, they're going to leave 58 in the field. You can attack that guy all day. He's not Jordan Brooks. He's not Bobby Wagner. He's not KJ Wright. And then when they go to the nickel, they bring in this younger guy, AJ Johnson, number 34. He's faster as far as a straight line, fast guy, but he doesn't have great change of direction. So I think the middle of the field, the 49ers will attack in this game. So that's Kittle over the middle. That's Ayuk on the slant routes, Debo on the digs, McCaffrey on all the choice routes over the middle, whatever they want to do. So and remember going back to the game a month ago in Seattle, Will, when the 49ers ran that Hollywood play where they faked left, they faked right, they went to George over the middle. That's why if I'm Seattle, I can't cover Kittle. I can't zone him and cover him. I can't man and cover him. So if it's Belichick, what he would do is take Kittle away. How do you take Kittle away? Tariq Woolen, my best corner, is going to match up with George Kittle. So let's see if they do that. But you're exactly right. The Jordan Brooks injury is profound for them. The one guy to keep an eye on, I'm hearing from Seattle, he will play in this game, is Ryan Neal, their safety, number 26. He's been out the last 3 games with a knee. All the intel we're getting from Seattle, he's going to play in this game along with Quandre Diggs. So that'll help the deep middle and their safety play. But what do they do without Jordan Brooks in the middle of the field? How do they match up with George Kittle in this game is going to be huge.
Just in terms of what you've seen around the facility this week, your conversations with Kyle, with the players, with everyone, what's been the mood? What's been we've had a couple of conversations. We had Aaron Banks on the other day. We had a quick chat with Javon Kinlaw, which is always entertaining from the locker room. He's a character, but everything was so steady, and I couldn't figure out if maybe the fact that they've known that this game is coming for 3 or 4 weeks, barring some kind of miracle with the 1 seed. They've been ready to prepare for this mentally, but I don't know, you see it ticks up with every stage of the season, and you almost expect there to be that kind of pensive, it's playoff time, but everyone seemed so level. It was astonishing.
Well, what did Aaron tell you? Because I think Aaron Banks, so he missed the last game with the knee. He practiced.
He told us he expects to play. Yeah, he told us he expects to play.
So I think if he plays, then Brunskill goes back to right guard, and they rotate him with Burford. So I think Banks will play. The thing with Kinlaw, well, that's another area to attack. He's got to play lower. Keep an eye on him. He's got bad knees, obviously, and he's a big guy. So when he comes out of his stance, he stands straight up. And teams have been picking on him. Low man wins in football. And you talked about DeForest Buckner. He had a problem with that at times because he's 6'7". He's so big. And you stand up and, they double team you, and they can just root you right out of there. Kinlaw's run defense has got to be better because Seattle will run right at him. Go back and watch the Arizona game, their touchdown. They had a couple of runs, run right to the 1 yard line, and then the one where they scored, and they picked on Kinlaw. So that Seattle's got, Damian Lewis, their left guard's a good player. And this running back, Kenneth Walker III, K9, likes to run between the tackles now. So Kinlaw's got to be low. And if he can't do it, Kevin Givens will be back for this game. There's other guys they can rotate in there. So that's an area, along with obviously Eric Armstead. You've got to be stout in the middle. As far as the mood, they're always serious. It's pro football. Every game's big, but it's a different vibe. This is playoffs. They are really on it. They're ready. They realize they got to win this game. They could say that all season, but you could still lose a game and you're in the playoffs. Now it's done. You're one and done. You lose, you're out. So there's and the goal of this franchise is not to win Saturday or this weekend after or the weekend after. It's to win the two weekends after. They know when February 12th is. And you promised me if we go to this game, you're coming to Arizona. They want to win the Super Bowl. So that's that. So they may be giving you the cool vibe, but this is a playoff game. So I'm sensing even more seriousness and sense of purpose. They're on it. The one thing, though, from being at practice yesterday, it rained hard during practice. Brock Purdy can throw the football through the rain. He was ripping the ball. And I know Kyle was like, the first thing he said to me was, "You see Brock throw it today? Wow." So, and that gives the play caller a sense of confidence that Purdy can throw in the rain. So if you think he can't throw in the rain, now you're like, what do we do? And Jimmy Garoppolo, he's from Chicago. He had rain games where he struggled. Remember that Indianapolis game last year on Sunday night? We had what they called a bomb cyclone come through that weekend. It was a monsoon. And Jimmy tried to put gloves on, but he had a hard time throwing in the rain. John Elway's got big hands, big, strong guy, played in Denver. He had a hard time throwing in the rain. Peyton Manning, when he went from Indianapolis to Denver, and he played in the Dome all those years at Indy, when he got outside of Denver, it took him a while to figure out what gloves to wear, but he had a hard time throwing in that weather. Brock, even though he's 6 feet, 5/8 of an inch tall, his hands are not that big. They're not small, but they're 9 3/8. Other guys have bigger hands. He proved to them he can throw in the rain. So I think we're going to have gnarly weather, Will, for this game. It's going to feel like a London rainstorm a little bit, and if it's windy, he can throw it. So I think that's my main takeaway this week is Kyle has tremendous faith in Brock throwing through the rain. So and then with defensive players, the rain slows down the pass rush a little bit. Not so much Bosa, because he's not long and lanky. He's more built to the ground. So he's more of a mutter, So I think he'll be able to handle. He's shown it before. We had a few rain games. There was one in Washington in Landover, Maryland, his rookie year. And he was forceful in the rain. But I think it'll give Kyle confidence that Brock can throw. And then you get into double moves with wide receivers. Slant and goes, stutters and goes. Different routes where you double move a corner, and maybe the corner slips. He comes up and takes one bite, one move up, and then he just loses his footing and phew, you get behind him. So I think, most people think you got to run. It's a rain game. I think Kyle has tremendous faith as a play caller that this quarterback can throw through these elements. And then you got the wide receivers to maybe double move these guys.
You're getting me excited, Greg. That's not fair.
Let's go.
It's just imagining Brandon Oak breaking some ankles on Saturday night and getting downfield and Brock ripping it through a monsoon. It's just, it's getting me all hot and bothered, and we've got 48 hours to go yet. So let's just keep it cool, keep it calm, and get ready for Saturday. And yeah, absolutely, by the way, flights are booked, hotel is booked. Our spot on Radio Row is booked. Our spot in the stadium is booked. We're in Arizona either way. We'll be there covering if it's Chargers Cowboys. We'll be there covering it.
Yeah, we don't want that. And I'll be there either way. But it'll be so much more fun, Will, if you're there, I'm there, and the 49ers are there. Let's face it.
I struggled a few years ago, I'm not going to lie. Greg, really appreciate your time as always, sir. Thank you so much, and look forward to your call on Saturday night.
And we'll talk next week, right after they win this game. We're going to keep it rolling.
Hell yes. Hell yes. We can't stop now.
Can't stop now.
The brilliant Greg Papa joining us. We want to hear that touchdown. Sorry, I'm shouting really loud, and it's quite late at night here in the UK. I'm sure that I'm going to get a text from the wife after that immediately. CMC. There you go. I just did it nice and quietly for everyone. Let's get on. Nicholas, I'm just going to roll through. Let's get our next guest on, because the next guy is a former head coach for the San Francisco 49ers. One of the best doing it on TV, one of the biggest personalities, and a guy who I'm sure is going to have some views on this Niners team. The brilliant Steve Mariucci joining us from Tampa Bay. Well, I'm delighted to say that joining the show now, a man who knows what it is to coach at the very top level and give analysis at the very top level, of course, with his fine work with NFL Network and beyond as well. The brilliant Steve Mariucci joining us on the show now. Mooch, how are you doing, sir? Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us.
Hey, thank you for having me on, and thank you for calling me brilliant. I don't think I've ever been described that way. I've had a lot of other adjectives. How you guys doing? Good to talk to you.
Hey, look, I'm not sure if Nicholas and I were given an opportunity to coach in the Bay for 6 years. I'm not sure we're going on 4 playoff runs, that's for sure.
Definitely not, no. I'm getting kicked out after one season, almost certainly.
A pair of one and dones right here.
Yeah.
Look,
Nicholas, hang on a minute. I'm looking at your background there. What's that? Who's playing football? Who's that picture of behind
That
you?
is a picture of Joe Staley, which I used to, when internet message boards were a thing, I used to be the moderator for the 49ers one. So as a gift to the moderators, the Niners sent us a signed picture of Joe Staley, who's pass blocking Jared Allen there. It's
Yeah, Joe Staley, Central Michigan University. Good guy. Yep.
Brilliant.
What a player. What a player. And we've got a few of those on this team now. Look, Mooch, there's so much to kind of break down with the Niners this season. How positive are you feeling about this team going into Wild Card Weekend with the Seahawks and getting ready for a playoff run? They've been coming for a few weeks, which is a slightly nice change from the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, here we go again with the Seahawks, and it's kind of crazy because the Seahawks with the new quarterback, Geno Smith, really exceeded our expectations, replacing Russell Wilson, who beat the Niners the last 14 out of 16 times before this year, right? So, Russell Wilson's not there anymore, so here's Geno. And, of course, the 49ers really had their way with the Seahawks this year. And everybody's expecting the same kind of result on Saturday over here at Levi Stadium. But my wife just walked in and handed me some fresh squeezed orange juice. You know what I mean? You know what? And she's from England, all right? I'll just tell you that. Her family is from England.
That is some California living right there. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, that's right out of our trees right here. Just squish them down and drink it. But anyway, the Niners, what a year they've had, huh? I mean, first of all, everybody's talking Super Bowl around here because they've been playing as well as anybody or better, right? And it's nobody's ever gone to the Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback. And I'm sure you're going to talk a lot about Brock Purdy because that's quite a story, isn't it?
Unreal, genuinely unreal.
Yeah, unbelievable story, Mooch. I just wanted to get your thoughts on Brock Purdy. I'm not sure this has ever been done before with a quarterback drafted as late as he has. I mean, what have you seen from him and why he's been able to be so successful?
So, we can't say that we've never seen this before. Unless he goes to the Super Bowl, we've never seen that before.
Yeah,
the rookie.
Yeah.
I worked with Kurt Warner at the NFL Network, right? Mm-hmm. And Kurt Warner didn't get drafted at all. He wasn't Mr. Irrelevant. He was Mr. Nobody at that time, and he didn't even get drafted. Didn't get invited to the combine, and he's now in the Hall of Fame. And so, as you know, Tom Brady he dropped all the way to 199 as well. But this is just a heck of a story with Brock Purdy, because really, in his last 5 starts, he's only started 5 games. He's got the highest passer rating of any quarterback and the most touchdowns of any quarterback. You could make an argument that he is playing the best quarterback in the National Football League over Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, name them. And it's kind of like, what? So there's a couple schools of thought too, guys. Some people here felt that they had a heck of a team, right? You guys follow them, so they're very talented roster. And some people say, well, heck, maybe we would have been in this position with Trey Lance. Maybe we would have been in position like this with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's already brought us to a Super Bowl. So now it's, Brock Purdy happens to be the guy in charge with the keys to the car. But, it's, whatever quarterback we have should win games because we're so talented, right? That's one school of thought. But when you think he's a rookie and he's playing better than anybody, that is the surprise. That he's not playing like a rookie. He's playing like a seasoned veteran, and the game's not too big for him. So it's kind of fun to watch and wait and say, are we going to see a moment where like, yeah, well, okay, there, he just showed his rookie moment right there, threw it to a linebacker for a pick six, but he's been playing great.
We get lucky enough to chat with these guys in the locker room each week after practice, and Trent Williams came on with us, I think, after his second start, and we said to him, like, how have you been surprised to see the poise this young man's shown, the pocket presence, just the stuff that a quarterback's meant to learn, not just have from day one? And he said, well, it helps when you've spent 10 weeks going up against the best defense in the NFL in practice every single week. As a coach, do you buy into that kind of iron sharpens iron idea that actually, like, what he's had to face in practice is going to have made a huge difference to his development?
Yes and no. Yes, that is a true statement. And Trent Williams is the best tackle in football. Okay, they got a lot of guys on that team that are the best at their position. Anyway, when you're the third string quarterback, or even the second, when you only carry two quarterbacks, what your job in practice is to run the scout team. That means you run the plays of the opponent against your great defense. Okay, and you throw the ball around and you go off the cards and you go, that's what they do over there in Seattle. Let's run that play. And he handles that. Yes, so he's throwing the ball against a talented defense. It's not live. They don't sack him. They don't try to kill him. They just go through the plays and recognize, some of the past concepts and that sort of thing. So while he is facing that good defense, it's not for real. He's got a red jersey on. He doesn't get touched, and it's not live action. So doesn't have the pressure on him. There's no pressure running a scout team cards, right? There's pressure carrying the baton right now on a really good team with high expectations. That's the pressure that he's facing right now. It used to be, oh my God, I got to see if I can play in this league to see if I'm okay. And now it's all of a sudden, all right, we know you can play, but now you got to lead us to the Super Bowl. That's your job. Don't mess it up. And so that's where he is right now. But the kid seems to have it, the it factor. I don't know what that is, but he seems to have it, right?
Coach, does he remind you a little bit, say you mentioned pressure, but when the pass rush comes a lot of the time, he's able to break the pocket, make those kind of second reaction plays that maybe Jimmy can't do so regularly. Does he remind you of a guy that you used to coach back in San Francisco, Jeff Garcia, that could do that kind of thing for make plays on the move?
Similar in size. I think Jeff was 6 feet, 190 pounds, soaking wet. Brock is a little thicker than that, but he's not much taller than that. So I guess now maybe Jeff was a little more mobile. I think Brock's only got about 10 yards rushing. He's not a scrambler runner kind of guy with like this new wave of athletic quarterbacks. However, he's quick enough, and he's got avoidability in the pocket, and he can escape when he should, and he's smart. He has good pocket presence. What do I mean by that? Well, he'll go back in that pocket and he'll slide so he can see and throw, but he'll get out of there when he should. He's got this clock in his mind. You can't sit there for 4 or 5 seconds. You're going to get crushed. So he'll leave the pocket when he should. He's making good decisions that way too.
What about what he's got around him? Because you mentioned that there's a lot of players on that team who are the best, or in the conversation at least, for the best at their position. You mentioned Trent Williams and that line, but making that trade for Christian McCaffrey, so many question marks made over it in mid-season, what they gave up for a running back, how much they've invested in running backs over the years when they've been able to get success out of guys who are undrafted late round guys. But this has felt like a whole different world bringing McCaffrey in.
So every game that he has started, which is 10, they have won. And, it's not all credited to Christian McCaffrey, but he's a different kind of a back, isn't he? He's think about how he fits on this team. And they didn't care about giving up draft choices for him. They got to pay Nick Bosa. They got to pay these other guys. They don't care about a couple of draft choices in the future right now. They got to try to keep this team together and win now, because the roster is built to win now. And so he gets them over the top because he's a running back, Will, that can play receiver. You got a Deebo Samuels, who's a receiver who can play running back. They've got these interchangeable parts all over the darn place, which makes it so difficult to defend them. And then, of course, Kyle Shanahan's very creative. We know that. And he's been having a ball. And now Debo came back last week. He missed a month, right? But he's back healthy. And if this team's healthy, Christian McCaffrey is just the missing piece that gets him over the hump.
I think you mentioned that idea of like how multiple they are and just how varied they are. We were joking about this week. They're a team who could go 5 wide without a single receiver on the field. Like, as an offensive guy, how much fun would that be to scheme for?
Think about that. Think about that. How much fun would that be for the opposing defensive coordinator? I don't know what personnel group to put out there. Do I put my base group out because that's what they have out there, or my nickel or my dime group and get real small and light and fast? Because then they shift back in and they smash it right down at you. And so they can do all those things with their personnel being that versatile. Even Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback, he's the highest paid fullback in the league. There's only 9 teams that use a fullback anymore. It's a dinosaur. They don't use them anymore. They don't come up in college. They're just you got to look under rocks for these guys. And he's the best in the league. And he can play fullback. He can play or even tight end. That's what he was in college, or tailback if need be. If you split those other guys out there, like you mentioned, Kittle can do about anything too. He can probably do the halftime show. And so, they just, that's what they have. They have some athletes that are versatile in what they can do.
Coach, you've obviously coached some fantastic receivers with the Niners, with T.O. and Jerry Rice. I wanted to get your thoughts on Brandon Ayuk. Full disclosure, I'm one of the biggest Brandon Ayuk fans around, have been since his days at Arizona State. Just wanted to get your thoughts on his development this season, finally getting over the 1,000-yard mark. And is he perhaps underrated in the ranks of the great receivers?
On whose development?
Brandon Ayuk.
Ayuk, yeah. So when I was in training camp, doing a show all day at their training camp practices, Brandon Ayuk got kicked out of the practice because he was fighting the day before, and then he got in another fight. He kicked him out again. I mean, this guy's he's a tough guy, all right? Arizona State kid. And, you're right. He's kind of the Rodney Dangerfield over there because he doesn't get enough respect, right? And so, but he's as capable as anybody as a wide receiver. They're not going to play him at running back or anything like that, but he really does his job well. And he provides a little toughness to that group because he's wired a little differently. I mean, receivers don't typically like to fight, but he kind of does. And so anyway, yeah, and he's been pretty steady. He's been dependable when the other guys sometimes get hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it feels like that's something they breed into them there. I remember talking to Manny Sanders at the last Super Bowl appearance, and he said, like, prior to this in Denver and everywhere else, I never blocked downfield. Now I'm doing it on every snap, and I absolutely love it. And it's just something about that Shanahan scheme. It's something about the way that Bobby Turner gets them playing in the run game. It's something about, like, they breed something into those receivers that's just like they enjoy blocking as much as they seem to catching the ball, which you'll know as a coach is quite difficult to get a receiver to do.
You said Emmanuel Sanders, huh?
Yeah.
So he's working with us on the NFL Network, right? He'll be with us to Saturday and Sunday, and he's joined us this fall. He does a nice job. He was a good receiver in the league for several teams, and now he's going to be really good in television. But yeah, of course, as you guys know, covering the Niners for a while, you guys know that really it's a run first type of philosophy, right? They're not going to sling it 50 times a game like Tom Brady does. They're going to try to establish the run game and the play action and movement kind of game. That's what they like to do, and play good defense. It's been a real good recipe, right? So when you run the ball, your receivers better buy in, because you're going to have to stock block once in a while, like most of the time.
Coach, I just wanted to get you, speaking of Saturday, there's a cliche going around about playing the same team 3 times in a season, like the Niners will do, and how difficult it is to beat the same team 3 times. I was looking back through your coaching career with the Niners, and the only one I could find was the '98 season, where I believe you faced the Falcons 3 times in the same season. Obviously, Garrison got hurt in the playoff game, and that really hamstrung you a little bit. Do you kind of buy into that, the difficulty of playing the same team 3 times?
Depends on what happened in the first 2. So So, all right, you guys put yourself in this shoes right here. So you're a guy, and some big old guy over there in the other classroom kicks your butt twice at recess, okay? 2 weeks in a row, all right? Do you feel confident that you're going to get him the third time around? No. And because the other guy's bigger, tougher, it's the other team is better than one team. Oftentimes when they sweep an opponent. Now, if it's close games, if it can go either way, that's a different story. Or if you split during the year, that's a different story, right? But the Niners really dominated the Seahawks, 27-7 in the first game. It was a little closer than that last time around, but it was somewhat of a beatdown. So, I mean, that advantage goes to the Niners just from a mental standpoint, a confidence standpoint. We can beat these guys. They're in our way. Let's get rid of them and let's move on. And the Seahawks have got to have a little doubt in their minds, like, hey, maybe our roster isn't as good as this. Maybe we can't stop George Kittle and that kind of thing, or maybe we can't pass protect. We got 2 rookie tackles, right? Lucas and Cross are 2 rookie tackles for Seahawks. They got to block Nick Bosa, for crying out loud. So that's tough, especially when the Niners have had success against them. If the Seahawks win, and they can, because Pete Carroll's a good coach and it's a good team. It's not a great team with the Seahawks. It's just a good team. If they win, it'll be somewhat of an upset, but in fact, they backed into the playoffs because the Packers, had they beat the Lions, there would have been the Packers playing this weekend over here, right, with Aaron Rodgers. That's what everybody expected. So this young Seahawks team is up and coming. They'll be fine. I think Geno will be their quarterback. I don't think they need to go draft one, and they can draft some other position. But they'll fight them. They'll fight them because they're rivals. But I think the better team is the Niners without any question.
I think you're right. And I think, as much as Pete Carroll is like, those 2 Super Bowl runs, it was very us versus them. That was the whole mentality. Like, that's what he will breed into this team. And so I totally expect them to turn up. He talked about that idea of the guys beating you up 2 weeks in a row. I don't think they're going to come into that third fight, covering their face and backing down by any stretch of the imagination. They're going to come out swinging. But I also think that from a 49ers perspective, talking to the guys this week, the fact they've known they're in for a few weeks, the fact that there is that little bit of kind of leeway, that there just seems to be, they're very healthy. Just everything seems to be very level. Like everything, it doesn't feel like a playoff week there. It feels like a normal week. And that's like, I don't know if I'm excited for that, because like that shows that they've got a really good mentality, or if you're a little bit like, but surely you've got to get up for this. This is, come Saturday, it's going to be huge.
As coaches, we try to keep the playoff games. We know that there's different parts of a season. There's an off season where you're just lifting and just kind of getting healed up. And then there's the preseason where you're trying to formulate your roster and shake the rust off and try to get back in the swing of things. And then that ticks up a little bit. And then it ticks up for the regular season, because this puts you in the dance if you're one of the top 7 seeds. Now it ticks up again for the playoffs. It just does, because it's one and done. It's more money. You're playing for the ring and the trophy, and all of that. We all get that. However, coaches want to try to make these weeks of preparation the same as we've been doing it all season. So it doesn't like you put crepe paper up in your locker room like high school homecoming. You just kind of keep it steady and do what you've been doing, do what got you here. You don't do more push-ups or jumping jacks or wind sprints. You just do what you've been doing. And so it's a kind of a business approach. We all know that it matters more, right? We all know that this is for real right now. And the crowd knows it too, come Saturday. So that emotional part of it takes care of itself, I think.
Nicholas, unless there's anything else from you, I just wanted to ask one about what we've talked a lot about the offense. No surprise, you're an offensive guy, but just a word from you on, you mentioned Nick Bosa and that great defense, but the job that DeMeco Ryans has done this year, he's now being touted for head coaching roles, and the way that they have coached up that defense to be what is right now leading the NFL in so many categories.
Yeah, and so that's when they were going to Super Bowls with Jim Harbaugh, and when they've had some success, it's been defense has been really good and offense has been steady. And so that's the same formula right now. Real talented defense. Eric Armstead now is back healthy. He missed a large part of the season. Fred Warner is as good as any linebacker in the league. He was the highest paid guy for a while. Dre Greenlaw and the Ward guys back there, and Gibson, and they're just a talented bunch and a confident bunch. Pretty darn healthy bunch right now too. So they're good against the run. You just really can't establish anything. They only give up 77 yards a game rushing, and they're the number one defense with total yardage and scoring. So it's just you're not gonna if you beat them, you got to beat them 17-14 or something, because they're not going to give up a lot of points. They're just not. And so that's why Geno Smith is going to have to hit some bombs away to Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, because they're just too hard to put a 12-play drive against. They're good pass rushing. Bosa led the league in sacks, right? And then you can't run, you can't pass. What can you do? So maybe you got to steal one in the special teams area.
Yeah, it's just final one for me. I wonder what your thoughts on just Kyle Shanahan's coaching job in general. He said at the start of the year that he thought this was his best team, and that's kind of been borne out. But just in managing the whole situation, in having three quarterbacks and then putting a rookie quarterback, a rookie 7th round pick in position to excel to the level that he has, is that a coach of the year type season from Shanahan, do you think?
Yeah, he's a candidate for sure. So it was Nick Sirianni over with the Eagles, Doug Peterson with the Jags. I mean, there's an argument for a handful of guys doing Brian Dable with the Giants. I mean, but certainly Kyle is in that conversation. At one point during the season, when you recall, they were 3-4, and Trey Lance had been hurt, and now they were lucky enough to sign Jimmy G back, right? It was like, whoa, thank God we didn't trade him away. And then, because I don't know what'll happen. Maybe Purdy would have played then. I don't know. So, and then all of a sudden, Jimmy G starts winning games. They were 3-4, and then they win 10 in a row. And so that's a long stretch of wins. It's hard to do that in the league. And so here we are with a healthy team, a confident team. And Kyle Shanahan has kind of pushed the right buttons. John Lynch has done a nice job putting that roster together. Let's face it, guys. You got to have the horses, man. You got to have the players that get the job done on the field. You can't throw it for them or block and tackle for them. You got to have those kinds of guys. And it almost seems like this is the stars are aligned for the Niners this year. I fully expect them. Well, they're going to have a tough game at the Eagles. They'll have to go to Philadelphia, and they have a good team, but they've got some injury concerns right now with Lane Johnson, the right tackle, out, and Jalen Hurst's shoulder, the quarterback, got a shoulder injury. So you don't know where that is going to go. So in my mind right now, the Niners are the favorite to get to that Super Bowl.
I'm glad that you mentioned John Lynch as well. Last thing from us, that decision, when you hear the behind the scenes story about that McCaffrey decision, where they played him with the Panthers, where prior to that there had been no conversations about him. Like, obviously, I mean, Kyle Shanahan's known him since he was a kid. There's a relationship there, but essentially he came into town. He was brilliant against the 49ers, and they kind of just went, he might be available. They're having a regime change there. Things are not going well. Like, do we just, should we go for it? And they took that plunge, and it ended up being brilliant, and John Lynch deserves
it. And they were taking a chance because, as you know, Christian McCaffrey had been injured for a couple seasons on and off. So there was a risk there based on his health. He looks pretty healthy to us, doesn't he, right now?
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. Mooch, so we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Hey, it was a lot of fun, guys. Thanks for having me on. We'll do it again sometime, okay?
Well, look, we're going to be in Arizona, so hopefully we bump into you there. We're going to be there. We're going to be there either way, covering it for UK radio.
Okay. Well, but maybe I'll run into you. You're going to be over at Radio Row, or where are you going to be?
We're going to be on Radio Row every day, doing our shows, and hopefully getting hyped for a 49er Super Bowl. But I'm sure we'll have a great time either way.
Hey, thanks, guys. Nice meeting you.
Coach.
And nice to meet you too, Coach. Thank you so much. All right, Nicholas, it's crunch time. We've come to the end of the show. We've had some brilliant guests. We've got loads more content coming out over the coming days. We've not really done predictions previously, but I feel like, yeah, if we're going to do it, the playoffs is the time to do it. 49ers right now are like 9.5-point favorites for this game.
Yeah.
The weather, I think, will bring that line in a little bit. But
Mhm.
what do you think this weekend? Where do you see this game being won and lost?
Yeah, the weather's an interesting one because the only real path to the Seahawks scoring points, I think, I like Kenneth Walker. I do think he runs into the back of his blockers quite a lot, but he has that explosive run, the explosive runs he can get to. The Niners done a good job of shutting that down with most teams. You had Josh Jacobs being probably the example, probably the lone exception. He had a good game against them, but the Niners, for the most part, have had done a good job of taking the run away. And if it's absolutely just raining cats and dogs, and the only avenue they have is explosive plays to Metcalf and Lockett, and that kind of gets taken away if you can't throw the deep ball in the rain. So it works for both ways, and I think the Niners kind of ace in the hole was what you saw on Sunday against the Cardinals. Like, granted, the Cardinals, apart from J.J. Watt, who was fantastically in his final game, kind of like a team that had given up for at least in the second half. Anyway, they played tough in the first half, but after that, the Niners easily pulled away and without much resistance. But the ace in the hole in that game, I thought, was the way the Niners set up the screen game. You saw it with McCaffrey and with Deebo Samuel, and you saw those outside runs to Elijah Mitchell. That's the kind of stuff that I think the Niners can still execute pretty well, even in really bad weather. You can get those guys, if they're all healthy, which they are, you get those guys the ball behind the line of scrimmage and watch them do work there, and you can get people. The Niners did an excellent job of getting blockers out in front of them, the interior linemen, the tight ends. Kyle Juszczyk again was mashing people in the open field blocking first. But I think that's the way the Niners get to offense, and I'm not 100% sure that the Seahawks are going to be able to get to the offenses consistently to be able to keep up. So I think the Niners, I can see it being relatively close to the first half, but I think the Niners pull away eventually. If they find enough avenues towards offense and limit the Seahawks, as they've done in the previous two encounters, and win this probably by just over one score, I would say.
And look, it's worth mentioning that against the Jets 2 weeks ago, they did find those explosive plays again. Against the Rams, there were a couple of big downfield passes, something that they had massively in that opening stretch, that 6-2 run they had to start the season. Big plays was such a part of their offense and just disappeared in the second half of the season. That you mentioned the screen game. I think that as much as they've got some decent pass rush, some good young players on that defense, no Jordan Brooks, their leading tackler who just flies around the field. He reminds you of those guys who are on the 49ers linebacker core. That's a guy who they're going to miss hugely. Great for them that Tariq Woolen looks like got back into the game after that pretty nasty looking foot injury and continued to play. And those young corners are exciting, but you are putting them into a very, very tough situation against San Francisco this weekend. And I just think they are going to have too much. I think they're going to overwhelm the Seahawks in the end. Like you say, one of those games where maybe they keep it close for 35, 40 game minutes, but then it gets away from them late on. And I've tried the whole week to be really like level-headed and be like, it's playoff football, divisional rival. The Seahawks have broken my heart so many times. There's so much else so much other concern to have about that. But this is a 6-2 team who scraped into the playoffs in the final week of the season, thanks to a shock Lions win in Lambeau and to a pretty bogusly called game against the Rams where they got a phantom roughing the kicker or whatever it actually was. It was hitting the kicker call, a pretty harsh call on Jalen Ramsey where also you could have called DK Metcalf the other way and negated the penalty. Like there was so much in that game that had to go. And this isn't me doing, I promise you, this isn't me doing they had the refs on their side rant. This is more of when you see teams win those tight games where they've maybe not been the better team, a lot has to go their way to do it. I always think about the Patriots Falcons 28-3 game in the Super Bowl. And Greg Rosenthal did a brilliant breakdown of that game where he was like, here are the 11 points after they went 28-3 down, where literally if the tiniest break of the ball had gone the other way, the Falcons are Super Bowl champions, and everything broke the Patriots way. And yeah, they were brilliant, and yes, they deserved the win, but like that's how it felt last weekend, and I just don't think they're going to get that same rub of the green this weekend. So I am taking a 49ers win. Saturday evening, it can't come soon enough. I'm so ready for it. I'm sure Nicholas is as well. Hit us up on a social at Gridiron, at UK Gridiron on Instagram. We'll be all over the game on Saturday, of course, win, lose, or whatever, but hopefully it is a win. And Nicholas, I hope you enjoy the game on Saturday.
You too, sir. After some initial panic, and I've got there, I think it's going to be a happy Saturday for us all in a red and gold persuasion.
Woo-hoo. Here we go. Thank you so much for watching and listening. As always, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. This has been Tales from the Bay from Gridiron.